All right, Schlegs. Another day of practice in the books for the Bucks. They've got one more on Saturday with student appreciation, and then ultimately, I think next week they're going Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I believe, and they've got the coaches clinic as well on that Thursday. Let me check and see here. I gotta check the schedule that was sent over to me with regard to the practice schedule. Here we go. Buckeyes, final week. Monday, Tuesday, Friday with a spring game on Saturday. So that'll be the schedule for next week as we break this thing down coming forward. We got Bill Bender, big show. We got Bill Bender for you on today. So that's exciting. Talk a little bit about Final Four, the Elite Eight, getting to this point. It's all chalky. He's got some great stuff he's putting out on Sporting News. So make sure you check him out. He'll be up in the next segment coming forward. Spring practice rolling along. Ryan doing a great job getting everybody available, trying to get those young quarterbacks ready. And here's the one thing, Schleiss, it's with all the players is this, but I think you see it a lot with the quarterbacks. You see that inconsistency. And sometimes, like in life, it's not how good your best is, it's how bad is your worst. Like what is the floor of what you're playing? And when Ryan talks about these guys flashing and, you see it during the week and you see it Saturday and Tuesday and Thursday. And you're like, man, like that's concerning a little bit because that was really bad. Then you 3 plays later, like, man, that's a hell of a throw. And you're like, oh, that was the same guy. And so it's just the up and down nature of this that you're always going to see out of these young quarterbacks and really young players in general. And it's becoming consistent is what makes you something special.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we talk about it. Urban Meyer talked about it. I use it all the time. Greatness is the accumulation of great days. Like, you got to be able to stack days. You can't just be a flash in the pan, right? Like, somebody doesn't want somebody that, why can't, like, man, he makes that play. Like, that's a freak of a play. Like, why can't he do that all the time? Like, you want consistency, especially when it boils down to, are they making the plays that they're supposed to make? They make some that they might not, right? I guess Cody Simon was a great example of that last year. Cody made all the plays that Cody was supposed to make. And then Cody made some plays that Cody wasn't supposed to make. And that's what you want. And he did it all the time. You want the consistency because just like everything in life, and we want a routine and we want these things so we know we can plan accordingly. That's the same thing that an offensive, defensive coordinator, a head football coach wants because they know when they call this play, what does the fit look like? Where could it go? What is the offense potentially going to do? We've eliminated a lot of the gray in that through film study. We expect our guys to be able to make this play and adjust to the other. But if they can't do that, or they can't sometimes and they can't another time, then what do you call? Now you're limiting that bucket, that pool of calls that you can have to where it's like, I only know that this guy can only do this. I only trust him if he does this. Then that's not advantageous for everybody, and it's not great for playing great overall team football.
It's not, Schleiks. Wanted to fast forward to this. We've been talking a lot about the fans and Ohio State. They've got great stuff coming up. Spring game next week or spring showcase, whatever we want to call it. It's been a showcase for years. Ryan wants to put some competitive situations out there, and they will, and it'll be good. But they also have the Saddle Up event that night. I know I talked about it yesterday, and we'll keep talking about it. Go check it out. If you want to get inside the Woody Hayes, take a behind-the-scenes look, see some great country music. They'll have drinks in there. Some of the former players, I think Jack Sawyer is going to be there. I think Will Howard, some of these guys. Like it's a darn good time. A lot of fun. Schleiks and I have been there in the past. I'm sure we'll be going again. And so you can see it right here. Who's playing this year, Schleiks? We've got
he's on there. Hey, this is what you do. You go to Durango Boots.
We got Russell Dickerson.
Oh man, what the Sam Dickerson? He's playing.
What in the Russell Sam Dickerson is going to be playing, which Schleiks is juiced about that. North to Nashville will be playing with our guy Evan on the lead, Evan Blankenship on lead vocals there, and former Buckeye and everything. It's always tremendous and always a lot of fun. What were you saying, Schleiks, about the promo code?
No, man, you want to get country? Because we got Buckeye Country Concert Superfest coming in the summer. Go to Durango Boots, type in all caps Schleiks 20. You get 20% off. We're just helping the people. Make nothing. I love those people. They're down in, I don't know where they are. Logan. I think they're in Logan, Nelsonville, something like that. Down there. Down there. Sorry. Our Rocky people, man. Those are our guys. Let's go. Guys and gals, by the way.
Rocky, Extra Tough, Durango, they take care of all of it. I want to throw this up here. I know we got Bill Bender on deck, and he's got some great stuff from the Sporting News I talked about. we'll dive on into. But being a fan of a college, if you can throw that up, Pat, it's probably 7 or 8 deep on the chat.
Oh, so deep.
And it was thrown up here, and the question is like, is it weird to be a fan of a college you didn't attend? And then they ultimately on the next screen put up, and it's got a picture of a bunch of folks from Ohio State, if you want to scroll, and said how to be a fan of a college team. You attend college there. Okay, that makes sense. Your parents attended college there. You live within 30 minutes of a university and regularly engage with folks from campus. Fair rules, Schlegs? Good,
No,
fair, or foul?
I think that there's more to it. I think that,
Give us the
as
nuance.
well, I mean, like as you and I grew up watching football, and it's different because you were in this city. Like when I grew up, yes, I was a fan of TCU and SMU because they had the Pony Express. They were right down the road. My dad got free tickets because he was a high school coach, and you could do that back then. So I liked them, but then I also would watch college football, and you watch the best players, right? Or you like the way that they play defense. Hell, watching teams in the league like the Ravens defense, the Bears defense. Now, granted, I grew up a Bears fan because I was born in Iowa, and I also like the Cowboys. It's like, but I grew up watching that defense. I like that style of play. So I think there's more than just parents attend 30 minutes in proximity. Like there's a lot of people that are in the great state of Ohio that don't live within 30 miles, never attended, parents didn't attend, and they're Buckeye fans because they're in the great state of Ohio. So I think you may have to put that in there, maybe a state college affiliation, much like Texas and A&M. There's a lot of people that go to SMU or TCU and they're Texas fans.
Yeah.
I mean, like it just is what it is,
So the thing is, I would incorporate, like you said, the state element of it, I think is important because the state of Ohio is big. And Ohio State is the land grant college of Ohio. It's huge. And whether people go to some mid-American schools here, whether they go to Cincinnati, whether you go to UD, stuff like that, maybe Cleveland State, there's all across the country or all across the state. I mean, there's 11 million people, I believe, in the state. And I think, the overwhelming majority of them are Buckeye fans. And so if you're within the state, and then I will also say this, like they say your parents went there. There's a lot of people that Ohio State does really well with whose parents, or maybe their parents didn't even go to Ohio State, but they lived in Ohio, and you have that generational tie to the state. And so if you have generational ties to the state, I think that's cool. And there's some fans like, man, I was a big time Florida State fan growing up because Florida State was really good when we were young.
Oh, and they had great unis, and they had like the tomahawk, I mean, like that was sassy sauce, man. And they were legit when we were growing up.
Yeah. So it was that's what I'm saying. They had the sweet deal. Dion was there early on, and they had Warwick Dunn, Charlie Ward. They had all kinds of great players. And so, like, as a college football fan, like you said, like you kind of gravitate to who's good and who's cool. I wasn't the biggest Ohio State fan growing up. I became more of that a little bit in middle school, like junior high, and then into high school. But my mom did go there, but like my mom wasn't the biggest Ohio State fan either. I mean, she liked Ohio State, but it wasn't like we sat down every Saturday, like we're watching the Ohio State play. And I think things have kind of shifted and changed a little bit as things have gone forward. And like we've kind of evolved over 30, 35 years. But I think there is a little more nuance to it than simply this.
Yeah. I mean, like, let's look at Stephanie Gale Schlegel. She went to Texas A&M. She graduated in 3 years. She attended there. She's not like an Aggie, like she married a Buckeye, and then like she loved the games at the Air Force Academy. She loves Air Force. She loves Ohio State because I played at Ohio State. And guess what my kids do? They love Ohio State because we lived in the state and dad coached them and played there. And it's like, that's what it is. But we live in a bunch of different places. And even her going to that school, there's a lot of people that go to Dayton and yeah, they graduated from Dayton, but they're Buckeyes. It's just what it is.
Yeah, it's all good. So you know what? So we'll ask Bill Bender about it because I think Bill Bender, he's
a Bobcat
from Central Ohio. He went to Ohio University. And just how college football fandom, how college fandom in general should work or could work. And I don't want to put bounds on it and shame people and say you can't be a fan of this team. Like if you like them because they're good. I had a friend that was a fan of Ohio State growing up because he was in New Jersey. I go, how did you become a Ohio State fan? He goes, because they had Archie Griffin and they were on every Saturday. It's like, and then he in turn ultimately went to Ohio State because of that. but that's how it kind of lures you in, like watching those things, especially when you're kids, and why I think it's a cool deal.
Athletics are the front porch to your university, Bob. Hey, President Carter, don't ever forget that.
They are. So it's kind of like the belt buckle to your body,
Yeah.
It's right there.
Holds the pants up, and it actually makes a statement.
It makes a statement. It's right there in the middle. It may not be the most important piece of what you're wearing of your ensemble, but that belt buckle can really set you off. And Schlegs, it provides a vital piece of utility by helping keep your pants on. Parents and athletes, protect what matters most with Export mouth guards. Trusted by professional athletes and designed by NHL team dentists, Export mouth guards are scientifically tested to absorb those high impact hits, protecting both your teeth and your brain. Export mouth guards feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including patented use of carbon fiber, custom fit to your own unique smile. They 3D print those bad boys to your own grill, which means more protection, better performance, max comfort, and clear communication so you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Visit exportguards.com/Bobby today and save 15% on your order. Export, protect what matters most. Bill Bender, the Sporting News, coming up next. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and now we're pleased to welcome in our guy, Bill Bender, ready to go. He's got all kinds of great stuff for the Sporting News that he's putting out there, so be sure to check it out. Before we get into anything else, Bill, I know that you're on. Hopefully you're listening. The argument, the debate that was on social media, I think kind of mid last week, early this week, about being a fan of a university. Do you have any rules for that? And do you think that what we kind of outlined, is that appropriate? Is it too much? Or do you think, hey, no rules apply to college?
I think you're on track. When you, like, as I've told you guys, going to a Catholic school, there was a lot of Notre Dame fans, a lot of Ohio State fans. And, none of my buddies went to Notre Dame, but they still like Notre Dame, and that's fine. The ones that did and didn't go to Ohio State, I don't really separate the two. So, and when I went to Ohio University, what you said earlier kind of hit, is there were people that would leave the OU game if the Buckeyes had a 3:30 game. And I was always conflicted on that. Normally I was covering the game anyway, but I was like, I get it. And I mean, that was what part of being at a MAC school is, yes, a large part of your student body is going to root for Ohio State first.
Hey, Bill, when you're down there covering it, like, I mean, obviously, like you're in college and you're doing what you got to do, and you got to be all in on this, Ohio Bobcat, football, basketball, whatever. But did you still also like throw some Buckeye nuggets in there and like have to go like watch the Buckeye game and throw that in there because you also knew like that's what people wanted down there in that area to know what was going on with the Buckeyes?
Well, I mean, when you work for the student newspaper, it was both, and the game was covered differently. I know we did play Ohio State.
Yeah.
When I was there. I'm trying to think if you guys were there yet. Not
we
it
were,
was
that was
not quite
the mascot. That was the mascot fight, which was great.
No, it was before that. It was
really?
John Cooper was still coach, I think, and Kenyon. All I remember is Kenyon Rambo had a huge game.
Maybe 2000, I think.
Yeah, and because I roomed with some guys on the football team and was around the football players a lot, I do know, and we've talked about this on the show before, that some of the guys that went to OU, part of the reason they went there is they wanted to play in that Ohio State game. And you guys noted it last week where when you played those MAC schools, those guys generally, they either didn't go to Ohio State, weren't offered to Ohio State, or they grew up Ohio State fans, some combination of that. And so that made those games a lot more special. I know it was 10-10 at halftime. I remember that. And then I think Ohio State pulled away in the second half. I believe Steve Belisari was the quarterback, but it wasn't the mascot game, the infamous. I am not a proponent of coming out of the tunnel and attacking another team's mascot the way that ours did in that game. Although that was a close game too.
Just trying to make a statement, just trying to do their part to distract from everything to give them a competitive advantage. And you know what? It's funny, like as you were bringing all that up, like I played with guys at the Air Force Academy from Ohio, huge Ohio State fans. To this day, they follow Air Force, they follow Ohio State. Like it's how you grow up more than it is, like I went there, I attended there, I lived 30 minutes. Like those are bad numbers.
No, and again, when you're around all these campuses, I always I married, my wife's from Kent. She went to Kent State. The MAC schools I didn't really have. We're supposed to, I think Bobby knows this with his brothers, we're supposed to hate Miami, but most of my friends that went to Miami, I didn't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I watched Wally Zerbiak and cheered for him in the NCAA tournament because it was a MAC school doing well in the tournament. So, which kind of brings us to this week in the Final Four. Like, there are a lot of Duke fans, right? I see a couple Duke sweatshirts at my son's lacrosse practices. So
why?
I think
talk about that. Like, here's a question: Can you root for Ohio State football, but then also like Duke basketball? Like, do you have to be all in on the fan of all sports at your university? Like, that's I don't even know who to root for. You tell me who I need to root for here. I kind of like Houston because their basketball team had a picture of them all jacked up with like big, huge 20-pound chains around their neck. I like that, you know?
Yeah, I think Duke has that following just because they've been good for so long. It's kind of like the Yankees, and you'll see a couple, like one of Grant's friends on his team, Bob, his dad's actually a Lancaster, or his grandpa's actually a Lancaster guy, and his mom's a Lancaster, went to Lancaster. So we were kind of talking to him, but I think it's just when you watch, I think part of the reason this year it isn't just Duke, it's Cooper Flagg. People are gravitating toward him, and he is really good, by the way. Unbelievable weekend. They've got the freshmen. To your point about Houston, though, it's weird when you look at the Final Four. I think Duke should win it. Duke has the most talent. They have the NBA lottery picks. Don't love this matchup, though, Schlegs. I think this Houston defense, the way that they make teams uncomfortable, the experience they have, I mean, we'll know the first 10 minutes in what kind of game Duke is in for, because I think Houston's going to be very physical with them.
Well, you brought it up, and Schlegs brought up the sweatshirts. Duke to me is a little bit like the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Yankees. Like, there's people kind of fans of them everywhere. And never forget, I got to Ohio State. I actually put it on, I think, for one of the shows. My mom saved it for me, and everything was so big back then. I think it was a large, but it still fits me, my Ohio State starter jacket. Yeah. And she gave it to me. My son wears it. He loves it. It's, wore it to one of the games this year. I think the Ohio State-Michigan game. And I told people, like you like Ohio State football is fine. Then basketball season, that was in the midst of like the Randy Ayers years, like 95, 96, 97. Like, they weren't exactly great. And so I was like, I had to kind of find, a different team to cheer for basketball, because they were just so bad at that point in time. And Duke was always that team, like, or Carolina. I think Carolina was a little more endeared by most. Duke was kind of the hated school when you look at it. But this year, Bill, and I don't know if it's because Coach K's left and they're still good, or maybe it's the fact that like Cooper Flagg is the star from Maine who is kind of a likable guy. Like, usually those stars from Duke you hate. Is Cooper Flagg the most likable star that we've had from Duke in recent memory?
Maybe ever. I mean, I think people like Zion Williamson, and I'm old enough to remember Leitner, and I kind of liked Leitner, which
they made a movie about him, Bill, where everyone hates Christian Leitner.
I remember what I was doing in that Kentucky game. I was watching in my living room, and he had the 10-10 game, and I'll never forget watching him hit that jump shot. I didn't have an attachment to Kentucky or Duke either way, but it was just such a fantastic basketball game that you remember those moments. But to answer your question, yes, Cooper Flagg is likable. I think part of it is too, because we know he's probably going to be the number one pick. Coach K is gone. It was easy to hate Coach K and everything next to him. The next player, whether it was Woj or Grayson Allen, or I could go on, Reddick. We have an interesting story we're working on tomorrow for Thursday at Sporting News on the 20. I'll ask you guys. I'm going to throw it to you without even thinking about it. So if you had to pick since 1985, so since it went to 64, who is the best college basketball player that didn't win a national championship? If I threw that at you, like if you were just had to react right away, who would that player be? Because I think Cooper Flagg will be in that conversation.
You'd have to know like who won a national championship in basketball. My GSF for that is like super low. So did Carmelo win a national championship?
He did.
He did.
So I'll give you a couple I need names.
More context for me. For me, I just need more context.
Well, like being a Texas guy, David Robinson. Like he's a guy that was amazing at Navy, had an unbelievable career, led an Elite Eight run.
Speaking of Texas, you got Kevin Durant there at Texas as well.
Kevin Durant. Shaquille O'Neal is a guy that, like, you go back. I spent the morning watching his LSU highlights, and you're like, wait a minute, he had 12 blocks in a tournament game. What are we doing? Who was guarding him? What are we doing? But he was in that. And here's the thing, and it kind of goes into what I want to talk to you guys about. So the Big Ten, 25 years without a national championship. And the reason we look for all these, why is this happening in the Big Ten? What is it? Why can't they win a national title? The last Big Ten player to be drafted number 1 in the NBA draft, Greg Oden. Before him, it was Glenn Robinson. And
Big dog.
What are those guys? Unbelievable talents at the college level. Neither one won a national title. And, the Big Ten has quite a list of guys that were very good that didn't win a national title.
That's tough. There are a lot of guys out there. I'm rolling through them. Some of them in my head of just kind of seeing like that Ohio State team in 07. You start rolling through the one Michigan team they had with Tim Hardaway Jr. and they had some talented guys on there. Like the fact, I don't think Charles Barkley, they even had it like to never make a Final Four. And you start talking like with him and Kenny Smith, like Kenny was saying he never made a Final Four, which I couldn't believe. Charles Barkley had never made a Final Four. Even just making a Final Four, Bill, there's a lot of remarkable players in college who were really good. We talk about Steph Curry at Davidson. He was at a smaller school. They made an Elite Eight, but they couldn't, make it to a Final Four. And, he was averaging 30 points a game in the tournament that year.
Yeah, he's one that's on the list as well. Jimmer Fredette. I went back and remember Jimmer Mania was a thing there for a couple years. So
how about Adam Morrison? Where's he coming in?
He'll be on that list as well. So it's fun to put together.
He related to Jim Morrison, I thought.
he looked like it.
He looked like him.
Yeah, he had the hair for it in college. And that's funny that you say that because I remember where I went out on a spring break trip in California and was out there when UCLA beat Gonzaga. And the people in the bar, believe it or not, they were cheering. It was, for UCLA in that game. And you remember those moments. I think the NCAA tournament is good for that. So either way, if Cooper Flagg and Duke win this thing, there's going to be that moment. He either did, like Carmelo did and Anthony Davis, or he didn't. And, here, and I'll spin it to you guys on this for the Buckeye fans. There's a couple of Ohio State guys on this list. Like you talk about Oden, you talk about Sullinger, Evan Turner, Jim Jackson. He's the one I remember the most because of those 90s teams you mentioned, the Ayers era. I think you still talk about when you ask Ohio State fans, okay, who's the guy that you thought if you could get one of these guys to win a national championship and you gave them those 4 I just said, I think most Ohio State fans would say Jim Jackson if they're around my age.
Well, because Jim Jackson, they lost to that Michigan team in the Elite Eight. They were right on the cusp of it, and he was doing a great job there for him. And then, unfortunately, you just run into a buzzsaw with a really obviously good, talented group of young guys. And it's just unfortunately sometimes how the brackets break, and sometimes the breaks ultimately within the game. Bill, as we look at this tournament, is 4 number 1 seeds making it to the Final Four, is that good for college basketball? Is it good for the tournament? I think the ratings are proving that it is, but it doesn't necessarily feel right when you're watching it. It seems really chalky.
I hope it's the exception to the rule. And we did have one in 08. I remember that tournament, Kansas and Memphis played in a national title game. It was an awesome national title game. The semifinals weren't great, but I think occasionally we can do this and see Houston and Duke and get excited about that matchup. Then you have the all SEC matchup on the other side where, look, the SEC, I'm not an SEC homer by any means, but they did have the deepest conference this year, and those 2 were the 2 best teams. So to see Auburn and Florida go at it, Walter Clayton, you want to talk about another guy that's just popped in this tournament, making clutch shots. I think that's going to be a fun matchup, and impressed with Auburn, the way that they knocked out Michigan in the second half and knocked out Michigan State in the first half, quite honestly. Bruce Pearl's got a really good team there. And I think, so to me, it'll be fine. Best case, I think we get Duke and Florida in the title game, and that would be really exciting to watch those 2 teams go at it.
Yeah, I'm interested. This is kind of cool because we always look at everything at the landscape of football, and we expect Florida to be good. Now they got a really good quarterback in the game of football. They should start to come up on the rise. But they're doing really good in basketball. Duke, not like a game changer when it comes to football. They're in the ACC, whatever. Houston, you're in the Big 12. What? And then all of a sudden you're the winner of the Big 12 in basketball, right? Auburn, terrible in football. Right now this year they're good in the SEC, and the SEC had the most teams that are in there. are the viewerships matching that? Like, I would love to see what the ratings are of this comparative to, what it is for the college football playoff, and like, what does that look like? And what does that look like on the grand landscape of like the TV revenue dollars that we think of in the NFL, and like how we don't want to mess with those in those markets. Like this March Madness is great for NBA basketball because it's not competing against anything. Like, this is the stuff that everybody wants to watch in college. So I'm just interested in see that and your take on that.
Yeah, I think with college football, it was a test this year. And Ohio State, I'm blanking right now. Were they 8 or 9? They were
8.
8. Okay.
Playing 9.
Playing 8, playing 9 at home. Okay. So, when you have we can call that a Cinderella run, but to me, Ohio State was, if we seeded this thing properly, they're probably seeded 5. So, I think getting the powerhouses through in the college football playoff is going to continue to be important. When you get Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas in a Final Four, that's probably the equivalent of this, but the eyeballs are better because the fan base is in football with those 4 schools. And, I think in 10 years, when we look back at what the playoff looked like each year, as long as you're getting a couple of those powerhouse teams through every year, the ratings will be fine.
We're going to take a quick break. We have more coming back with Bill Bender after this. Welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show, and still here with Bill, our guy Bill Bender. Go check his stuff out on the Sporting News at Bill Bender at 90 or at Bill Bender 92 on X. Bill, like you mentioned, Schleich mentioned the I believe 14 SEC teams or 6?
I think it was 14 out of the 18, Bob.
14 of the 18 ultimately got in. There was when Bill and I think had talked about this, heading into the Elite Eight. Which, by the way, Bill, my wife watched, I guarantee you, I asked her, she was trying to lie to me. I go, did you watch more than 40 minutes of college basketball this year? I mean, that is all college games together. And the reason I asked that is because she's going to probably win our pool at our house, minus the probably. She's in the 93 percentile, maybe 95 now for ESPN. She had all 8 Elite Eight teams. I think she has all 4 Final Four teams, and she has Duke and Florida in the final, with Florida winning it, which a lot of people would say she's hedged pretty well, with these last couple of games to pick up a lot of points should it all pan out. But, we start talking about some of these trends that have occurred this year. Do you think those trends continue? I know we have the portal, we have NIL, and there's all this stuff that we've been talking about. Do you think they continue, and do you think it's going to be long-term good? Because I know the ratings this year have been good, and they've loved the big brands, but I think if you lose the appeal of any potential Cinderella, then it seems like this tournament maybe becomes a little more like a foregone conclusion. And as we talk about expanding it, people then just start saying, well, why don't we just get the 32 best teams and cut out a whole round? And what are we doing with the beginning?
Then that would be regressing, in my opinion, because of the Cinderella element to March Madness, which if you really look at the NCAA tournament, I read the book by Seth Davis years ago, it really launched with Larry Bird being a Cinderella for Indiana State, right? Yeah. An undefeated team that played Michigan State, Magic Johnson, really launched the NBA and March Madness simultaneously. I think the difference with college football to me is I'm okay if the Cinderellas are kind of left out. And I know that sounds really hypocritical and talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I just think these are different sports. Yep. College football to me has always been about, I say this to my editors all the time. What's it about? When they say rankings don't matter, I was like, of course they do, because you can throw that number 1 up in the air. And when you beat number 1 in football, especially in the regular season, it means a lot more than beating number 1 in basketball. I know they stormed the court. People can take that for what it's worth, but I really do believe the Cinderella element in football, like Boise State, we can say there's a Cinderella, but did anybody really pick them to beat Penn State? They could pick it to be close. That's fine. But when you get into the round of 8 and round of 4 in football, I think you got to have those teams that are the superpowers in. Whereas in basketball, had McNeese gone on a roll, or Drake gotten the Sweet 16, or, one day maybe the Ohio Bobcats, I'd be all about it.
Well, I think it's also the landscape of you have 64 teams versus 6. Well, you have what? I mean, you have 12, right? So you have 12 potentially going to 14 or 16 versus 64. And there's even talks of expanding that, right? And plus they play so many more games. You could beat a team number 1 lose, then that team comes back and beats the number 5 team, and they don't really move. They don't lose a spot or anything. Like that happens. They play more games. The bracket's bigger. And here's the other thing too, Bill, about the playoffs and the Cinderella. You go look at the Boise State back in the day when they played Oklahoma, right, in the Fiesta Bowl, and they won that game. Like college football, like you want some of those Cinderellas, but it's just they got into the tournament. They got into the playoffs. And then what do? Because there's a lot of schools out there that obviously don't have the financial resources that the big dogs do, the blue bloods do. But if they develop their guys and they stay healthy and they're all at the end and they have a very veteran team, they can do some damage if they stay healthy. And then when you go into this playoff bracket, can they stay healthy? But then now that becomes a battle of attrition, which makes it even more difficult for them to stay in, which then actually, if somebody lose somebody, that means that it's going to be potentially be a blowout. Right. That's just what it is, man. That's the game of football. It's just significantly more violent, harder to stay healthy, and hard to do when you don't have those resources.
And harder, I think another thing we're going to look at in 10 years is, okay, how did the 18-team Big Ten work? You know, because I'm already starting to eyeball some things for next week when the tournament's over, start to break down Big Ten quarterbacks. Well, I'm saying, okay, Ohio State and Penn State are going to be good next year. But what about that middle? You know, is it Oregon? Is Oregon continue on the trajectory they're on under Dan Lanning? Are they an every year playoff team? Does Michigan bounce back? You know, who's that kind of sleeper team? A lot of people are going to be picking Illinois, by the way. They have 10 wins. They get Ohio State at home. They got their quarterback back. And how do we look at this over a 10-year period? Is it easier or harder to be the dominant school in a conference like Ohio State's been, quite frankly, for like 25 years? Is it going to be harder to do that in an 18-team conference, in a new playoff field? And I think those are the trends I'm interested to see develop over the next 5 to 10 years as it coincides with NIL and the transfer portal. I'm sure you guys saw the Kirby Smart soundbite from this week where, you know, he's talking about his concerns about the sport, and he's not the only one. So, I mean, there's some interesting times ahead in college football, but it's still exciting, right? Like I still get jacked up watching the Final Four this weekend. It'll be a lot of fun.
It's going to be fun, but like you said, there are some canaries in the coal mine, and it's things that I think there are solutions that can happen, that can solve it, but those solutions ultimately have to occur, and they've got to occur probably sooner rather than later, Bill. And we've got, what is today now? Today is April. It's April 3rd. It's Thursday. April 7th, I believe Monday is the House settlement. Mm-hmm. And we'll see if they're able to get that reconciled. Because if that happens, then I think that there is a path forward for success and to be able to get some guardrails and guidelines. But if that doesn't, then I'm not sure exactly where to go. And I'll leave you kind of with that. Is I know the NCAA tournament's this weekend, but you know, we'll start looking at next Monday. I mean, that might be the big day in college sports that's a delineating point moving forward.
Right. And you want, you know, I love the college game. You guys played it. You lived all that out on the field. And I think there has to be that. It brings this whole conversation full circle, honestly, about being fans and what fans want. Because you will hear a fan or two occasionally now say, well, they're just being paid. Well, yeah, but there's a way to do this and make it really exciting for everybody. It's not going to be like college football was in 1990 or 1980. And a lot of the progress is good, but I don't want it to go off the rails, so to speak. You want to have guardrails. You want those things done. I know that phrase gets used all the time. To me, it comes in the form of specifically contracts and, you know, not being allowed to transfer more than once without, you know, sitting out a year, fulfilling those contracts for your NIL on both sides. So those contracts are good. So maybe that's a result of what happens, and we can move forward and make college sports even better, which I think there's a chance to do.
Absolutely, Bill. We appreciate your time. Thank you for spending it with us and moving your schedule around this week. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll catch up with you next week and talk about that Final Four and what the champion looks like.
Yeah, I think your wife's going to win, Bobby. I'll talk to you guys next week.
The great Bill Bender. Go check his stuff out on the Sporting News at Bill Bender 92 on X. Some high praise coming from a former Buckeye to a current Buckeye.
Ooh.
Might want to hear what this is coming up next in headlines. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And Marvin Harrison Jr., former Buckeye, first-round draft pick, Arizona Cardinals. He was back at Pro Day. cruising around. I mean, he pops in town. I mean, he is an active Buckeye. And when he's here, he's around. And I tell him, man, it's great. I tell all the veteran guys, it's the alumni go, it's good for you to be back here, for those guys to see you here. That matters a lot. That visibility is very, very important. Please make sure you keep coming back. And to their credit, they've been coming back and they've been seen and they help the young guys out. I think he's the LeBron James of football. There's no limit to him. Every record at Ohio State, he's going to have it. There's nothing he will leave college without having done. Coming from a guy who won a Biletnikoff, Schlegs.
Yeah, I know, man. Guys, I mean, I just want you to understand, like, this is a guy obviously super talented, not far removed from the program, was on the team when you have like a Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Jigba, Jameson Williams, like all the guys that he saw too, and then never played with JJ. And then it's like, dude, this guy is like the LeBron of football. Just a man amongst boys and what he does. And you know what? I mean, I spoke to him on the other side, like he's coming over, Bob, and I'm just, dab him up, gave him a hug. And it's like, hey, what I said to him, I was like, hey, so, I just appreciate the way and manner in which you handle your business. You look fantastic, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Boom. You know what he said to me? Buckeyes with like a long S, right? Like that's what it is, Bob. So I'm like,
Wait,
awesome.
Marvin or Jeremiah?
Jeremiah.
That's
Jeremiah.
awesome.
But it's just, he's all Buckeye all the time. And so is, Harrison, like they're just Buckeyes, man. Like the guy Lathan comes back, Buckeyes. And here's the thing, too, like you're seeing this where they know they could go get more. They choose. We talked about, I think, yesterday's show, Bob, about the developed here. Like they choose to make less and stay because of the development. Because, and I honestly believe this, the like-mindedness of everybody in the building. And I think you guys forget about these are the most competitive rooms. Competitive rooms, right, Bob? Like you and I were talking about the other day, we were watching Iron Claw, and Kerry got passed up by David, because David's better on the mic. That stuff happens in the rooms, guy. Like it's my turn to be that guy, and you got passed up, maybe. But yet you still go out there and grind and you compete, and you don't wish nothing bad on anybody. Like you just want to put it all out there and go have competitive excellence. That is a very, very hard thing to do, which is why I just think the position coaches and Ryan Day and the players collectively have built this culture at Ohio State. And I think it's just fun for older guys like us, Bob, to be able to watch that go on and be fans of them, not only on what they do on the field, but them as men and how they handle their business while within the Woody.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And so that's the connectivity is something that they have at Ohio State that they've always had. And it's something that kind of separates this place and makes it unique. And I know I talked yesterday about being at practice on Tuesday and, talking to some recruits and, people are asking about, the guys over here. I'm like, yeah, the dad, I mean, the players don't, but like their parents now. I'm like, yeah, look at the guys that are back that, in their 20s, 30s, 40s that are around here that are hanging around the program, providing positive juice and like positive role models, advice, like mentorship, all of those things to the current guys. And that's why I always tell them, like, be here, be present for the guys, because it matters a lot to them. And people invested in you. And now it's time for, the next generation as you come through to begin to invest in the next group of young guys. As you get older, maybe it's a little bit of a disconnect, but very few people have ever been through that and walked through it and understand it. And so Marvin has been that. He was that guy. He was the guy that had super hype coming in because, maybe not quite like DJ, but his dad's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
So he knows what the pressure of those expectations look like and what that feels like to be that dude at Ohio State and to grow up in that. And so that's huge. He gets it. He understands it. For him to heap that praise on JJ. Awesome. All right. Coming up next, we got our tailgate talk brought to you by Real Truck. We got some comments from a couple of shows back that are some pretty good stuff, and even something possibly from yesterday, Schlegs, that I want to get to as well. All that coming up here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. So we had some comments. What was that? We had Lathan on Monday, and there was some great comments in here, Schlegs. And I want to see if I can pull this up. And Pat, if you can toss on the screen, it was great from the show with Lathan. It's from Will Star Ward, who comments on it a lot. Said, Schlegs, wearing a hat is the worst thing you can do for your thinning hair. The tight cap traps the heat. Ever notice how many Major League Baseball players end up bald when they're older?
Huh. That's good to know. So now what you're trying to say is I got to go out and just put product in, and I'm gonna do that. You know what? I appreciate that. Who said that comment?
That was from Will Star World.
Hey, Will, I appreciate you. I'm just gonna say because of IG and all those things that you are qualified, and that is scientifically backed, and I'm gonna start doing that. Because Bob, you're not wearing a hat right now. I'm just gonna make sure I do my hair every single time, or I'm just gonna let it breathe. Maybe that's what it is. I'm like not letting it breathe. Though I wear a trucker hat, right? I like the mesh in the back because I do like it to breathe a little bit. I'm gonna go that route.
I'm gonna get you the Spartan. We're gonna get you the Spartan shampoo, Schlegs. I'm telling you, my barber told me how thick and look good it looks. So
Lush.
maybe we'll get Spartan to be a sponsor promoter here. You use it, I'll use it. AJ's got that thick hair. I mean, he might be using it. I saw these videos with all the Instagram people looking on the movie stars. They look good. So
Yeah.
Buckeyes, or you could get a visor, Schlegs. You'd be a big brain visor coach, like
Charge it to winning because my
like-
sides are good. Like I don't need it. So if the visor's just on the side, I used to rock a visor all the time because like it would like perfectly like when you put it on it like poof your hair up in the front, Bob.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I don't always kind of stay there. And then I went. I didn't want to necessarily be a visor guy, but I might have to be a visor fanny pack guy. I think they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah,
Fanny packs are making a comeback.
Well, it's like you're a big brain dude. So you've got like Kirby Smart, Drinkowitz, you've got Lane Kiffin, Steve Spurrier wore a visor. Like a lot of them are offensive guys too. I always call them big brain offensive visor coaches because they don't wear a hat because their brain needs to breathe. They need room for it to get the oxygen in there. Mike Gundy, well, Pat just threw in the chat. Mike Gundy wears the visor. Mike Gundy wears the visor because he's got the sweetest lettuce around. So if I was him at like 56 years old, I mean, I'd be wearing that thing, rocking my mullet, just shaking that thing out.
I would never wear anything on my
Look
head.
at that.
I mean,
They say Mike Gundy's mullet's a recruiting violation. Like you shouldn't be allowed to look that
I would
sweet.
play for him. I would play for him. Like Mike, like, hey, Coach Gundy, you're my dog. Develop me. But like, hey, let's go to your ranch and like move cows and stuff. Like, how do you get it that sweet? Like, what's your barber's name? Do we get a hookup? Do I just type in Gundy 50 and I get 50% off my haircut? Like, what are we doing?
All right, Buckeyes. All right, well, that's it for this edition of Tailgate Talk brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. Coming up next, Schlegs is going to wrap up the show with his parting thoughts. All right, Schlegs, here you go. You've got like a minute and a half.
Coach Prime, I'm practicing. I think it's imperative that we listen to this.
I want to see you practice.
Yeah,
Anybody could put together a highlight tape of my
Yeah.
highlights. Let me
Yeah.
see your whole game and your lowlights. I want to see you practice because normally how you practice, that's who you are.
Oh my goodness.
That's who you are. The person you are
Preach.
at home when nobody's
Tell
looking, that's who you are. The person that said, oh, they said that darn, I ain't gonna never make that darn leaderboard. They ain't right. They cheat and they doing that and they play favoritism. That's who you are.
Here's the thing about that. Like, I think sometimes we look at that and we look at that in the context of sports, but like, hey, parents, like we talk about export.com, hey, parents, attention. That could be you. That's how you parent. Hey, that's how you are at your job. Like, you guys honestly believe, like, hey, when you get 18 and 22-year-old men and your job is to develop them for the next phase of their life, right? Life after football. I'm trying to make sure that they can maximize their genetic potential in the game. But what about when they're done? All that stuff matters. Like, they are on a job doing this all the time. And when they go out in the real world, I want them to be that. I want them to be, and we talk about alpha, you're like, oh, alpha this, alpha that. No, I want them to be that. I want them to be like, look at what I do on my sales. Look at how I interact with people in relationship. Look at, how much I'm in the weeds of doing this. Like, and I'm consistently that all the time. Boom, I'm stacking days vertical and I'm counting sideways because I just do things at an elite level all the time. Are we going to fall short 100%? Right? But like, that's what he's articulating there goes far beyond the field. And I think in our society, with all the social media and all this other stuff, everybody wants to put out their own highlight reel. That might not be who you are. So the self-introspection is, who are you? And that's what that was kind of alluding to. That's my side nugget of the day.
All right, well, that's it for this edition of the Bobby Carpenter Show. Stay locked in here. We'll get you Friday, get you ready for Student Appreciation Day, the final week of spring ball as we head on into the full off season. And Schlegs, you know what else is opening up? The portal.
Oh,
Your favorite coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.